Baby, baby, I'm gonna leave you. I said, baby, I'm gonna leave you. I'll leave you when the summertime. Leave you when the summer comes a-rolling. Leave you when the summer comes along. Baby, I don't want to leave you. I ain't joking, woman. I got to ramble. Oh, yeah. This is the Community Solutions Podcast. Jason Bradley, Andrew Richter, the great equalizers of the North, letting equality flow in every opportunity, and only the cream rise to the top. How are you?
I'm okay.
Yeah?
Okay.
You sound melancholy.
If I knew what that meant, I would definitely say. Howard Cosell once said to Muhammad Ali that he was sounding very truculent.
Truculent.
And Muhammad Ali said, well, if that's good, then I'm that. So, whatever truculent means, if it's good, I'm that.
What year would that have been?
Early 70s, maybe?
I wonder. There's a line in the Rocky movie where he works for that loan shark, right?
Oh, yeah.
And he goes,
Yo, Tony.
Yo, Rock, you're getting some money here, and maybe you want to think about investing into some condominiums. And he goes, I don't ever use them.
Yeah. That was in the second one. Yeah, that was in the second. Yeah.
I wonder if that's where that joke came from.
It might have been, because one of the things about Stallone is he modeled Apollo after Muhammad Ali.
Right.
That was the inspiration for the Apollo character. Okay. So I'm sure that he took... Now, Muhammad Ali's last fight, Rocky II was in 1979. I want to say the Thrill in Manila was in like 76.
Yeah.
I think Ali's last fight was like in 80. I think we just make something up. And so they were a good pair, even though Cosell didn't know anything about boxing.
Right.
So it was still good. Now, Jay,
yes.
Right to business straight away. I was going to share something.
You never guessed the song.
Oh.
You really want to move on?
I knew it, too.
Oh, I'm sure.
Baby, what? Say it again.
That's a lot of babies.
It sounds like a Led Zeppelin song.
Yeah, you would be right.
Am I? Okay, because I only know like 3 of them. And
really?
Yeah.
Yeah, Babe, I'm going to leave you from Led Zeppelin.
Okay, there.
Yeah, and I think that'll be fitting for this week. We're setting you up. This is part 1, and we may not do them consecutively, as we're going to have some people that are running for office, candidates in as guests on the show here.
We are in high demand.
We are, and. But this is going to be kind of an ongoing series as we're looking. I mean, race is the big subject right now, and is are all whiteys racist? Are all crackers racist? Or not?
You honky.
That's the question.
I got more than 4 teeth.
But I mean, that seems to be what they allege on the left. But yet there are more and more and more African Americans that are finding a voice and saying, you know what? I don't know if what I've always been taught is the right thing. And they're making a different choice this year.
Well,
and
unfortunately,
we'll see.
Not enough people are speaking out.
Right.
I think that, and that includes people on the right. I think that there's just too much, you can't have this opinion. You're censored on social media. You're ostracized if you don't toe a certain line, or Twitter flags you as misinformation.
Right.
Unfortunately, free and open debate is something which I always encourage. I mean, even to the people who hate me, they have a right to speak, and that goes for everybody. That goes for everybody from the Black Panthers to the Ku Klux Klan has got freedom of speech.
Well, they're kind of on the same side.
Well, but I mean...
Yes. It's funny, but yes, they are kind of...
I don't know what's going on.
They both came out of the Democrat Party.
All I know is this. We got a curfew again in Minneapolis.
I know.
Between Fry, Carter, and Walls, which one's Larry, Daryl, and Daryl? That's what I want to know. Because the 3 of them couldn't grab their ass with both hands if you spotted them 1.5.
Larry, Moe, and Shemp.
Yeah, I don't... Yeah. The later Stooges.
Which one's the unfunny one? All three of them.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't find a competent brain cell between the three, and I mean, and that kind of goes to the crux of what we're going to get to in a second of why people like that keep getting voted in. I'm baffled as to how anybody in the inner cities who's complained about the same damn things for 50 years keeps voting for the people who claim to fix them and they never fix them.
Right.
Now,
yeah.
Jay, just on a depressing note, because it's going to get worse as the show goes on, and I've been in kind of a funk lately.
Yeah, I don't like when things get worser.
Yeah, I mean, well, you know, they got to get worser before they get gooder sometimes. Well, there's good, gooder, goodest.
Yes.
The primary was a couple of weeks ago, and I know we've talked about it. We did a show on it.
Yes.
About 4 episodes ago or so.
I voted.
Okay, I'm going to share something with everybody, and I meant to do this, and we just got sidetracked like we always do. We played our little Minneapolis game and all that stuff. That 11-hour show. It was
11.
It's like watching a Yankees-Red Sox game. It had to be. I didn't vote in the primary, and I question whether I should admit that on the, because I'm always honest here.
Yes.
I'm honest to the point where my wife's mad at me sometimes. Okay, so I mean, I'm just kidding, hon, just joking. But the point being, I've never been more unenthused to vote in my life.
Yeah.
I'm voting for President Trump. Forget him for a second. Everybody else, I'm totally unmotivated right now. I have no county race. I don't have. I don't even know about my city council. I'm not even looking, which is bad. But I'm not a big fan of the city council in Plymouth, although they have a few individuals that are okay. But there was no primary, no contested race, no nothing. There was nothing to draw me there. And I know that there was a Senate race that I just am unmotivated to get into as well. Republicans have had their chances in Washington to repeal and replace Obamacare. They failed. They had chances to cut spending and they failed. I don't believe them when they tell me what they're going to do. Sorry, I just don't. They left President Trump hanging. There's still like 100 judges they haven't. How can you not in 4 years confirm these judges?
Exactly.
Where's the Senate when the House was investigating the Russia hoax and all that?
Yeah.
Why couldn't the Senate Judiciary Committee do the same?
Yeah.
What were they doing?
But I'll tell you this: I would rather have a Congress that does nothing than a Congress that is pushing Marxism and moving us further left.
Yeah, I know that, but I don't want my choices to be a lot of government or 75% of what the other side wants. And I feel too much like those are my choices. Now, again, nobody has to be with me 100%. I don't expect that.
Right.
But what I expect is when after 6 years of bitching that we're going to repeal and replace Obama's health care. We're going to finally, after 6 years, you get the chance and you fail at it. Yeah. How many more second chances do you get?
That is one of the few things left that he put in, which is kind of nice that most of his legacy has been erased. But
President Trump said to do a lot of it on his own.
I don't like that.
I know, and I don't either, because you might say, well, the president has been repealing executive orders that went too far.
Which I'm fine with.
But it establishes that the president can do that. The next president can...
Well, I'm okay with repealing executive orders. What I'm not okay with is creating new law from the Oval Office.
Yeah, but executive orders have their purpose.
Right.
Because
to direct to the executive branch.
Right. So they're not all evil. But
no.
I just... outside of the presidential race, I'm just not into anything right now. I'm just not, and I don't know if I'm just sort of wearing a mask and tired of being told I don't care or being told I'm a racist because of the color of my skin or what. I've just had it, and you can't. I'm going through a funk. Okay, can I just go through a funk?
Yeah,
I'm just going through a funk, and I don't mean the funky.
So
I don't mean Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch.
Oh boy,
it's just
little Parliament funkadelic. That's okay. Little Bootsy Collins. You can go through that, George Clinton, but just snap out of it before Election Day.
Is that Bill's brother?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, it's not.
There was a George Clinton who was vice president, though, wasn't there, under like Madison or something?
Maybe.
Yeah, okay. There was a DeWitt Clinton.
Probably not the same guy.
Guy from who created bonding to get the Erie Canal. Yeah. At least that paid for itself.
Yeah. We're still paying for that bonding invention.
I don't know. I know that was part of it. So I want to say he was the mayor of New York, though, not the governor. But I could be wrong on that. One of you people scoring at home with those fancy damn phones can look that up. So Jay, just I mean, there was no, just nothing motivated me to go, and I know that's bad to say on the air, but you gotta. I get why people are down in the dumps right now. I mean, I just understand it.
It's overwhelming. The masks, the rioting, the looting, the fires, the Marxists
the
spending 2 minutes on Twitter and watching what these people say. It's
the incompetence of the it's like the Democrats have to walk this line of they can't offend anybody, but they can't let the place go to hell. But by doing that, you're in a freeze mode.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, what they called it 100 National Guardsmen or so. Oh, wow. I mean, no offense on those guys, but 100 people is going to be hard to stop. Did you see Chris Steakhouse?
No.
It got just bashed in. The windows are all, I mean, it just, I would love to see every business pull up and get the hell out of Minneapolis and say, you know what?
Yeah.
You deal with this dump. You keep this dump.
Mm-hmm.
It's a dump. The whole town is. The city council is. Their mayor is a piece of garbage. A little girl couldn't beat a 6-year-old in arm wrestling. He's just a twerp. And it's just, I'm sitting here. I can't listen to the guy speak for 15 seconds without wanting to rip a chicken's head off.
Not everybody that rolls up their jeans and tucks in his shirt is.
I just wear pink socks. Probably got sandals on too. I mean, jeez. All right, I'm fired up. I'm fired. But I just want to share with everybody that I didn't vote. And I know that, and I have voted. Jay, I have voted loyally. Whoever I voted for, and it's shifted over the years, and I voted, I voted independent before, I voted libertarian before, if I didn't think the Republican was up to the job. I have not voted Democratic for 24 years. So, but the thing is that, I always did my duty as a citizen.
Mm-hmm.
I always voted in primaries. I always have. And so for the first time I didn't do it. So
it's okay to be down once in a while. We'll cheer you up. I don't know how, but
I don't think you're going to.
Get you
this show's not going to cheer me up.
No, it's not going to do that. But just one moment on that, I guess.
Now you voted.
I did.
Okay.
I did. I was the only person in the polling place other than the people working there.
Really?
Yeah. So that was encouraging.
Normally it's me and 3 ladies who smell like mothballs on primary day, but actually in 2018 it was a decent, because I voted election day on. I voted early on in November, but I did it at Plymouth City Hall. But
well, I don't think that it helped that there was a separate presidential primary day. Because that is the election that most people turn out for.
Yeah,
and so you put everything else on a different day, and you're just not going to have the energy behind it.
Well, and you add to it that there weren't a ton of city and county primaries. There weren't a ton of. Most school districts don't have a primary.
No.
You have the one Senate race, and which was a foregone conclusion already.
I had one in my ward, and
yes.
so I had to make sure that I I was there for that.
Oh, and don't forget Hennepin County. I mean, you got
boy.
wonderful options there.
Well, and yeah, we'll just
Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Let's just leave it at that. So,
yeah.
Hennepin County, hopeless.
Well,
It's just a hopeless. It's a hopeless place.
We'll see.
It is. Sorry.
We're here to bring hope to it. So I hope that's one
you know,
day.
I tell you what, you want hope, you can have it. I just. It's funny. I even at night, I didn't even really follow it like I normally would. I just kind of needed a break.
Yeah.
And it just.
Well, you got it. So it breaks over. Get to work.
Well, I show up here every week for 174 consecutive weeks. Okay, so that's not changing. You know.
Right.
So we get. Okay, Jay. Let's jump into. So yeah, we'll pick me up. I'll take my Zoloft and my. 39 cocktails of pills or something, and I'll get back up. No, I'm kidding. And I'll get back up to snuff with my bipolar disorder. Jay,
Yes.
you mentioned the destruction of property, the constant rioting and looting, the ineffectiveness, inability to get that under any control. Before we get into the history, what is the objective here? I mean, we're going to get into that in future episodes. We know what the ultimate objective is, and that's Marxism.
Yes.
But I mean, what? By the way, I wanted to share something here on this. Do you know?
Well, Marxism is a tool. I just want to say, I think the ultimate goal is total control.
Right.
You know, it's Marxism is what they use to get there. Cultural Marxism, classical Marxism, but I think the goal in the end is to have total control of everything.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just no doubt about it. But where did I see this? I wish I would have taken a picture of this. But the polling on support for protesting has really plummeted over the summer. I saw something that it was a plus 25. I thought it was Frank Luntz tweeted something, but maybe he didn't. He's got too many posts about Trump's speech right now that I can't find it. But in Wisconsin, I know it went from plus 25 to even over the summer.
Wow.
And I think that
on rioting?
Well, on the I didn't really like how the question was asked.
Yeah.
However you want to say it, a majority approved of protests in June. I found it was Frank Luntz. 61 to 36 on June 14th. On August 21st, it moved to 48 to 48.
Wow.
That was in Wisconsin alone. Black Lives Matter's approval rating's gone down 22 points in that state. Wow. So, I mean, you and I thought there would be we said this, that there'd be a backlash, and there's been a pretty big one. So,
well, I mean, when the president's approval rating goes up and Biden's goes down during the Democratic National Convention, a little bit of a problem.
Yeah, I'd expect. I didn't see Trump's remarks tonight, but you know, I would expect I think that the Hill already tweeted out something about Trump taking the lead in swing states.
Yeah.
Even though Biden has a small lead overall, but we know that that's not what matters.
Right.
And I think they're prepping everybody for polling like on Monday or Tuesday to come out showing Trump ahead. So Gallup and Zogby reported him at 52% a few days ago. So I think you're going to see. I think Biden's going to be the Dukakis of this, Mr. July.
Well,
I think he
hope
might
so.
be. So
I don't know. You've got the Democrat Party already setting him up to. They're giving their excuses already.
Well, but that's not a good sign. I mean, if somebody's supposedly in the lead, you don't start playing defense.
Right, and they are. It's like, you don't give up. Clinton the other night, don't you concede under any circumstances.
Wow. Don't you do that.
No, the other one.
Oh.
Yeah. That one.
Yeah. So I think the president's floor is much higher than it was too. I think his voters are with him, regardless. And I've said too that the strategy of the former vice president of sitting in a bunker and going on cushy interviews on CNN, the voters he needs, they're not watching CNN.
No.
Okay, so he's not reaching, and he's not campaigning. He's not out there. He's not making any stops anywhere. And if he is, he's dressing like Attila the Hun. So, I mean, he's not connecting. And I just think that there's a backlash again. I just wonder, how fast you can turn that around. Momentum is a hard thing it's hard to move the needle the later you get in an election. But
and that's
I don't know. I mean, Trump did it last time.
Pelosi today was calling for Joe not to go into the debates.
Yeah. What does that tell you? It was a debate in about 3.5 weeks.
Yeah.
September 26th or 24th, I want to say, is the first one. So it's coming up here in a few weeks. I don't know. You don't have to hold his hand, but I mean, to not go in there and debate is just absurd. So I don't know if Biden's released or had somebody do it for him. I'm sure he didn't do it. I'm sure Joe was taking his nap. So anyhow.
Yes.
But I want to, we talk about everything being racist and blah, 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 blah. Jay, we have to step back and understand how we got here.
Yes.
Yeah, how did we get here? How did we get to the point? And we've talked about the black vote before and how it's overwhelmingly Democratic and why. And, I've never understood it. I mean, I've never understood why that is. If I were in the black community, I'd be scratching my head as to what their leaders are doing and telling you. And, I was always raised to question authority and to, make my own mind up.
Yeah.
And thank God I was not a sponge as a kid. So, I mean, we got to go way back.
Yes.
Way back to my territory, the Civil War.
Yes.
Me, that's my territory.
Back when you were in your 30s.
Well, but late 20s, okay? But when we go back to the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments,
right.
which, to make that very simple, the Civil War and Reconstruction, the ending of slavery, the defining of U.S. citizenship, and the black men at the time who were allowed to vote from that point forward, right. 21 and older. And remember, it was 21 back then for everybody.
Yes.
So that began sort of blacks having a voice. They could vote in some northern states before that. I can't remember if there were restrictions on that or not. I was in my teens back then, so my memory's a little hazy there, Jay.
Yeah.
So, but it doesn't matter.
Right.
And we had the Republican Party basically being formed out of being an anti-slavery
right. And the Whigs,
factions.
The Whigs were not able to make it happen.
Yeah.
They just they weren't strong enough,
Well, they split along sectional lines.
Fillmore killed the party.
Yeah, the Compromise of 1850. I mean, they split along sectional lines. You had Southern Whigs who Alexander Stephens, the vice president of the Confederacy, was a Whig.
Yes.
Robert Toombs, the first Secretary of State, was a Whig. So ultimately, they did split. And the anti-slavery factions, remember there were anti-slavery candidates, in several elections before that. The first prominent one being John Fremont in 1856.
Right.
And when Lincoln was elected, finally the anti-slavery forces, had a majority of the government.
Right.
Still didn't all agree with each other on how to go forward. It took a while.
Right.
So, and the Emancipation Proclamation's always been misunderstood. President Lincoln issued that as a wartime decree against states disloyal to the United States.
Yes.
It did not free slaves in states loyal to the United States because he had no constitutional authority to do so. That's why the 13th Amendment came. We had to change the Constitution. See, there's that process which we don't do anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
but there's a lot of misunderstandings. I mean,
the whole era is, the Civil War is taught as the good guys versus the bad guys, and that's such a disservice to anybody trying to understand the causes and the aftermath.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you look at states' rights, but you also look at, the states wanted to keep, perpetrating slavery. But slavery has been part of the American struggle since the beginning. Now, we didn't have, we really didn't have the same number of slaves as like
countries in Europe too.
Brazil and in the Caribbean, and we've talked about that before. That they had way more slaves there, and in England and over in France and other parts of Europe,
they colonized Africa.
Yeah. There were those issues as well.
You didn't get the British out of South Africa until the 90s.
Right.
Come on.
But in the Constitution, the 3/5 clause always gets a bad rap. Well, that was put there as a time bomb within the Constitution to try and get rid of slavery, not to say that a black man is only worth 3/5 of a man, but to try and control the representation, because otherwise, by importing more slaves, all of a sudden you're getting more representation within Congress.
Yeah,
and you would have had people who were in favor of slavery holding on to control of the Congress forever, enshrining slavery as a right, and that's why they did it.
Well, and let's not forget the Constitution wrote in an end to the slave trade, that the end date would be in 1807.
Right.
That you could, and then there still was smuggling and stuff that went on, but it was to a much less of a degree.
And even before that, the original draft of the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson had a whole section in there about getting rid of slavery, but because all the colonies needed to be united.
Yeah, he didn't want to bring up a divisive
He took that
issue.
out, because
Northwest Ordinance outlawed it. I mean, that's the first document that governed our area, the upper Midwest, because they were a territory.
Yeah.
Then.
So there's always been a push to get rid of slavery, except for in the South.
Well, and remember something, if you go back to the Lincoln-Douglas debates, President Lincoln talked about slavery dying a natural death.
Yes.
That if you contained it, at some point it would, at that time, nobody was foreseeing a civil war with thousands of people dying, and they were all trying to avoid that.
Right.
And one of Lincoln's ideas was, look, if you just contain it, if you just, because we had repealed the Missouri Compromise by then, the Dred Scott decision, it kind of opened the floodgates, and if you just kept it locked in a quarter of the country, eventually it would die out without a war and without that kind of bloodshed and disruption to the country. And I don't know if that would have happened or not, but it may have. Of course, it might have been 2 more generations before that would have happened. We'll never know. But slavery's always been a struggle. It was not the only reason that we had a civil war either.
No.
But the aftermath of that Civil War created still a divided nation on race, because when the 1876 election happened, there was an alleged compromise that put Rutherford Hayes in and Sam Tilden out, and one of that was an end to military reconstruction. The Northern troops, I want to say, were still in maybe 4 southern states at that point, and once military reconstruction ended, you had the Jim Crow laws and things like that taking effect, and you talked about blacks voting Republican. If you go to the 1868 presidential election, where President Grant won for the first time, and I can't remember who he faced, Horatio Seymour, I want to say, from New York. Without the black vote, he might have lost the popular vote. He might have. But again, you had military reconstruction in the South, making sure that, we hear about the Solid South.
Yeah.
Okay, that was a democratic thing.
Yes.
And it really wasn't until the 1920s that would really change, because the Civil War generation had died by then. They had died out. I mean, I want to say Teddy Roosevelt won one or two states in 1904. I know Warren Harding won Tennessee for the first time ever in 1920.
Right.
I'm pretty sure President Coolidge won a few.
Right, but you had like the Ku Klux Klan, which was started by Democrats.
Nathan Bedford Forrest,
in the South, and so you had.
And they had all their knockoff groups.
Yeah.
I mean, that the Klan was one thing,
right?
But the local law enforcement, was a knockoff of Jim Crow and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
There were literacy tests, poll taxes, things that blacks couldn't pay,
right?
All to prevent them from voting. So there were a lot of things. The separate but equal clause. Plessy v. Ferguson, which is a joke. I mean, today is rightfully a joke.
And not to mention just all of the segregation. I mean, having to sit in the back of the bus, not being able to drink out of certain water fountains. And it was in their face every day what the Democrats were doing to them. I would say it is today, and we'll get there later. But we need to remember that point as we come into the now.
Yeah, and I think. There were prominent blacks who George Washington Carver, and there were Jack Johnson, the boxer, later Joe Louis.
Yeah,
and
even through our revolution and stuff, there were prominent blacks.
Yeah, I mean that moved the needle a little bit. Socially and were acceptable. Obviously Jackie Robinson and some people like that.
And Jesse Owens.
Yeah, Jesse Owens, the track star.
Yeah.
So I think when, World War II ended, people started to change their minds a little bit about where we were racially. And in fact, in 1948, if you go to the Democratic Convention, remember the Southern delegates were outnumbered, but they still could deny somebody a nomination. And Harry Truman nearly lost the nomination by supporting civil rights.
Yeah.
I mean, supporting it 20 years before it happened, or 16 years before it happened. And it splintered the Democratic Party at that time.
Well, it even started, though, under FDR. And that's what's odd. And I don't know if it was because of, Herbert Hoover and what brought about the
hard
Great
economic
Depression,
times will change people's minds.
That was kind of the beginning of the offering of free things.
Yeah.
Well,
and FDR was not somebody who pushed equality, though. I mean,
he's kind of racist.
I mean, he let. I'm certainly not a fan of his wife.
No,
but because I think Eleanor Roosevelt was horrible to him.
Yes.
It's just me. Okay, I don't want to get into it, so don't give me your email give me your feminist crap. But she refused to go to their second home in Warm Springs, Georgia, because she didn't support segregation, and FDR let it happen in the Army. And again, I think in his mind, winning the war maybe was more important than using it for social experiments. But my whole thing is, if somebody wants to fight for their country, I don't care what they are, but that's just me. But it did perpetuate. At the same time, I think Roosevelt, kind of in a weaselly kind of way, was able to gain more black support by promising free stuff.
Right.
And I think ultimately, when you're in you got to remember we had no social safety net at that time. And when you're in a depression and you think things are hopeless, you're going to be more apt to take that stuff than you would be in a normal time. So blacks did slowly vote for President Roosevelt. I don't know, when I was preparing for the show, the earliest I found accurate data on black and white voting was in like the 70s. You take a guess, and that's about as good as it gets.
Wasn't it pretty accurate though? Like in 64 during Johnson's election,
I don't know. I don't think polling and exit polls and things like that were as prominent as they are they were later. We think that that's when the big shift happened, and it probably did.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know that that's when it started. I think it's slowly. You're right. It slowly started in the 30s, and if you go to 1948, when Strom Thurmond led a third party there, the Dixie Party or whatever they were, and picked off a few southern states, that's when the Democratic Party really splintered on the issue.
Yes.
And it would kind of continue for the next for the next decade or so. In the 50s is where things really started to change and the black community was divided. A guy like Martin Luther King, who's revered today, and rightly so, was really controversial at the time. I mean, there were a lot of blacks who didn't approve of the protests and the sit-ins and the nonviolence and all that. And King eventually won in the end, but there was factions that disagreed with that way of
well, and on both sides. I mean,
you're right.
You had the Malcolm X crowd, which was like violence now, versus King, who was like, don't you dare lift a finger. You let them beat you, and you let them see you getting beat, and you will win in the end.
Right. Bull Connor, get out the fire hoses, and in the end, you're right. In the end, he was proven right. And you go to the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Now, Jay, we got to set the stage. Civil Rights Act, what is that exactly? I mean, what did that do what was the proposal? It was right after President Kennedy's death.
Now, we got to say, though, first, the Republicans had put forth a civil rights bill that the Democrats would not vote for.
Well, it was an old filibuster. Didn't they bring the cots in? And stage a all-nighter or an all-weeker?
Yeah.
Well, they hadn't adopted the cloture rules yet. I mean, I don't. It was around that time that came in, that you could call for a vote to end the debate.
Yes.
So that was not, that didn't happen prior to that.
Right.
So it was the last old-fashioned filibuster. So I mean, they did put forth something, and I don't recall what year that was, but ultimately another bill got passed that still didn't get the support of most Southern Democrats at that time.
Right.
And a handful of Republicans as well. There were kind of there were factions everywhere.
Right. But again, I mean, this was a more liberal bill that got passed in 1965, or 64.
Yeah.
And, the Democrats by this time had gotten a lot more liberal, starting with William Jennings Bryan, and through the years, whether it was Woodrow Wilson, who was probably the worst, followed by FDR, and then LBJ, who was probably third worst, and Truman was okay for a Democrat.
Truman and Kennedy, I could live with. I can't.
But
funny thing was, I wouldn't have voted for either one of them.
Right.
So I would have voted for Nixon, and I would have voted for Dewey. So you're right. The sides were different at that time. So President Kennedy gets shot. LBJ takes center stage and basically, for lack of a better term, uses Kennedy's death.
Yes.
Now, remember, they had
some would say helped facilitate his death, but
I won't take it that far. But now, remember, George Wallace had staged I can't remember the governor of Mississippi that had staged when the college integration happened in the early 60s. And President Kennedy fought back on that, and in the end won the day. That was brewing. So it was brewing whether he lived or died.
Right.
And he was going to, at some point in his presidency, a civil rights bill was going to cross his desk. And you're right, it was more liberal, the one that President Johnson signed. But the result of it became a huge shift in black voting.
Yes.
A monumental one that I don't know that there's a parallel in American history of a swing happening and Republicans failing to correctly point out that many of them voted for it. Many of them had championed it long before that. Southern Democrats were the ones who filibustered it. And you know what? And I remember this. I remember when Al Gore was running for president, and his father was a senator and voted against the Civil Rights Act. Robert Byrd voted against it. J. William Fulbright, who Bill Clinton worked for, voted against it. Imagine he was running. Now, Al Gore was running against W. Imagine if George Bush Sr. had voted against it, what the reaction would have been.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's totally absurd.
But, I mean, ever since this time, Republicans really have dropped the ball.
They haven't even tried. And the problem with Republicans is they think the way to get minority votes is to go to them and act like Democrats.
Yeah.
And that's where they've dropped the ball.
No, what they should have done is pointed out from the beginning where the Democrats stood on this stuff. I think it's easy enough. If you go back, LBJ, he gave a speech at Howard University in 1965 and said, "You do not take a person who, for years, has been hobbled by chains and liberate him, bring him up to the starting line of a race, and then say, 'You are free to compete with all the others,' and still justly believe that you have been completely fair. This is the next and the more profound stage of the battle for civil rights. We seek not just freedom of opportunity, but equality as a right and equality as a result." And that has been the guiding principle on civil rights since 1965. Well, really 1964 when they passed the Civil Rights Bill.
Well, in the contrast of Johnson running against Barry Goldwater, remember Barry Goldwater, who quite frankly is somebody I have a lot of respect for as a small government guy. But the mistake he made of casting a vote against that, really has had recriminations. But like I said, I can't think of a parallel in history where a group has shifted so much so quickly, because you had the aftermath of that.
Right.
The aftermath was government program after government program after government program. Free this, free that, housing, education, transit, health care, all aimed at allegedly helping poor people, and yet I've always alleged that it's had the opposite effect. That it removed the entrepreneurial self-individualism that was always championed in America, and put people into groups. Because one thing I don't like is labeling people. I don't like putting people into groups. I don't like taking people based on their race or their income or their job or where they live and, throwing them in a box and making assumptions about them. And to me, that's exactly what these kind of programs do, because it traps people. You're let's just say, Jay, that you're on food stamps, okay? And you work you're trying to get a job, you finally do, you get 10 cents ahead, and wham, everything is cut off of you. Well, you're either back to starving, or you're in that cycle forever. You're perpetually, generations now, 3 generations now of minorities have been, public housing has had the same effect. Rent control has had the same effect. You keep people in a box where they can't get out of it. It's the second they succeed, there you are to take it away. And yet, the voting patterns have not changed.
Because they offer more stuff and more stuff and more stuff.
But the problems never get solved.
Oh, that's because they don't deliver.
Yeah, but President Carter got, I believe it was 88% of the black vote. I want to say in 1970s. Even President Reagan only got about 11%. President Trump although many people think he's going to do better among them this time. President Bush wasn't able to make an effort, even with his compassionate conservative trying.
He never reached out to minorities.
Well, but his way of reaching out was to act like a Democrat. Same thing with Hispanics. All right, we'll have open borders. Well, that didn't get him anything. So there was, the mistake made is that you have to go. I feel like minorities never hear that. They never hear that voice.
Right.
They never have candidates running who express that to them. They don't, because they've had generations where they're just stuck in the same place. They don't know how to get out.
Right.
I mean, it's in some ways it's not their fault.
Right.
I mean, but that's how we've gotten where we're at. Where you have these inner cities where they're high minority, high poverty. They've gotten worse over time, not better. And Jay, we're community solutions. How do we get them the hell out of there? Because I don't want anybody feeling hopeless. I don't want anybody feeling the way I feel right now. I don't want anybody being depressed and ticked off. I don't want anybody to starve. There's no reason for it in this country. At the same time, I don't want somebody dependent on government for their transportation, dependent on government for their house, dependent on government to eat, dependent on government to, whatever else. Okay, so how is this cycle of dependency combined? I mean, does the shift in voting have to happen first, or does the policy have to come first?
Good question. And let's look at where we are right now. I mean, I don't know if there's a big city out there that's run by conservatives. Maybe Oklahoma City. Maybe.
I would. Oklahoma, I think President Trump won every county.
Yeah.
Charleston, West Virginia, maybe.
Maybe it's getting more that way. But the city
define
government,
big city. Are you talking like a biggest city in a state?
Yeah, biggest city in a state or biggest couple cities. Well, I would say even more than the biggest couple of cities. Because, I mean, if you look at Minnesota, you've got Minneapolis, St. Paul, Duluth, Rochester, even Moorhead. I mean, they all are pretty blue.
Yeah, St. Cloud maybe a slight exception.
Is less so, yes.
That's changing.
Yeah,
at least to a point. And you got a lot of young people who live there.
Yeah.
No, you're right, and I don't know that is that way everywhere.
No, I would imagine.
Go into South Dakota, I don't
Pierre,
think
South Dakota is probably pretty red.
Rapid City's very red.
Right.
The western part is much more red than the eastern part.
Bismarck might be pretty red. Fargo might be more blue in North Dakota.
Pretty purple.
Yeah. You get into Montana. I think Helena's kind of red, kind of blue. That's pretty purple. It gets pretty blue when you get out west of there into some of those cities. But
the state as a whole is pretty red. But you're right; it's got its blue pockets,
and it just gets Idaho's pretty red, but Boise is
purple,
kind of purple. And then once you hit Washington, it just falls off the map.
Well, if you stay towards Spokane,
right,
Tacoma, it's a little different. Yeah. When you get to Seattle and stuff, you're gonna. I mean, you see that. I've never seen such a divide like that before, but you see that pattern a lot everywhere. I mean, even if you look at a purple state, look at a state like Ohio, which I would call a lean right state, but Cleveland, Erie, Cincinnati, the suburbs are pretty purple, and the rest of the state's dark red.
Right.
It's just so. But again, the big cities where the slums are and the ghettos is where the Democratic vote seems to be.
Right.
It doesn't seem to matter. You're right. It doesn't seem to matter what state. I think St. Louis County might be the only blue county in Missouri, but that's, Missouri used to be a swing state. It isn't anymore. But, you're right. That may be the only place.
I think there's some areas maybe around Kansas City.
There might be.
Because I'll tell you that the mayor of Kansas City is not very concerned.
On the Missouri side or the Kansas side?
Pick one.
Are they the same?
No, they're separate cities.
Oh, are they? Okay,
yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, because they're different in different states.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. There is But what has it been with big cities? It's like the same issues everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing gets fixed. Nothing gets done. Promises are made all the time. More government, more government, more government. And you don't see. Now, there's a couple things that have happened, and we've talked about it, the destruction of the nuclear family, the destruction of the black father.
Right.
And the black father is been erased almost, and the government has stepped in to be the black father. And the result of that has been all of the unplanned pregnancies that are just plaguing the black community. I mean, the high school dropout rates, things like that, I mean, they're all tied to the family.
Yeah.
You know, like Dr. Phil says, the most prominent person in a kid's life is the same-sex parent. I couldn't agree with that more. I don't agree with everything Phil says. That one, I wholeheartedly think that he's right.
Yeah.
And the absence of the black father, you know, or the black father that's got 3 baby mamas, okay, and is on welfare, that is killing the black community. It's killing them. Those kids don't have a chance. Or their chance is...
It's small. It's tough. It's an uphill battle.
Those kids, I guarantee you, they're in daycare all day. They're in poverty. Their moms might be trying. Okay, they may be. But, you know, you don't have a high school diploma and you have unplanned pregnancy. You are a 1 in a million to ever get ahead in this world. And that cycle is getting worse by the minute.
Yes.
And I'll tell you, education's a big part of it too. And who has stopped the ability of these kids to have school choice?
Teachers' unions.
Yeah, and the Democratic Party.
Well, same thing.
Right. I mean, they're joined at the hip.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, if you want to tick it out of there, a great education is one of them.
Yep.
Not the only one, but it's one of them. Okay, and
I would assume, that black parents would want to take their kids out of a bad school and put them into a good school.
I think
they had the opportunity.
I think they would do it in a heartbeat if they could. But let's be honest, Jay. Most of them can't afford private. I couldn't afford private school.
Right.
Okay, it's not a white thing. It's a middle class. Lower middle class thing, no matter who the color you are.
My kids went and are going to public school.
Right. I went to public school. My nephews one of my nephews just graduated from Armstrong. I mean, it's it's not a white-black thing. No. It's an income level thing that the elites can buy their way out, and they leave the crumbs to the rest of us. But yeah, if you put people in charge, they would, and again, weren't dependent on the government to say, to tell you where to go or what to do, you'd get a different result. And I think it just makes me think, if I'm a Democrat and I want blacks to succeed, that's what they keep saying, that people who aren't Democrats are all racists. Why is it that you'd hold them back? Why isn't you go get that great education, wherever that education is. Yeah. That should be championed. And it just tells you where the ulterior motive is. The ulterior motive is to keep them there.
Well, to be fair, I think that they want to keep blacks and whites in public education because they get money for students, and that's why, the more students they have, the more students they can label as special ed so that they get more money. The more free lunches or reduced lunches, the more money they get. Yeah, but when you're in a densely populated area like that, of course, your local school is going to try to keep them there. And, again, it is the teachers union. And
fine, if they want to keep them there, they can compete for those kids.
They should.
Yeah, but there's no incentive to get better when there's no competition.
No.
And it's not a money thing. I mean, what's spent on Minneapolis and St. Paul schools is off the charts.
And it's been ever increasing for how many decades, and there's nothing to show for it.
Nothing. Nothing.
How long are we going to keep trying the same old thing? I mean, Democrats have been, since the 50s, 60s? When's the last time that somebody got elected to the Minneapolis City Council that wasn't a Democrat or Green Party?
I don't know. I know they've had a majority since the early 60s. I don't know if there's been pockets of,
But they're
other
not the
people
only
here and
one. Look
there.
at Detroit. Look at Chicago.
Yeah. New York. Well,
Baltimore.
New York's had Republicans in there.
Yeah, they have. Rudy Giuliani and others.
We've had a few, but there's been a few exceptions.
Right.
You go Ed Koch.
Washington, D.C. Yeah.
Yeah. Marion Barry got caught with cocaine and got reelected.
Yeah.
It's the big cities. I just cannot fathom what's going on right there. And and you think about it. I think one of the problems is that real solutions are going to take a generation. Real solutions are going to be long-term things. Yeah. And that's not what somebody running for office wants to promise. I give you free stuff in January.
No.
But,
that's what our forefathers often would promise, though, is like, you come here, you work hard, you create a life for yourself, and your children are going to be better off. And your grandchildren are going to be better off. And people used to be able to see ahead like that.
And you know what? Black leaders used to say that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? There used to be that optimism. Used to be there.
Yeah.
But to me, I listen to black leaders, and I use that term loosely, because to me, flopping your mouth doesn't make you a leader, but it's just me. But I don't hear that. I don't hear a you go work hard and you go get a second job and you go you go after, you don't take no, you don't how do I put it? If you listen to people who are a success, okay, at whatever your definition of success is, I guarantee you they got knocked down more than once. Okay. Oh, yeah. Everybody has. Nobody's led some charmed life where they never had anything happen bad to them. Some people have had businesses failed and then they succeeded later.
Yeah. Michael Jordan got cut from the high school basketball team.
That's right.
Herschel Walker used to be a fat kid that was unathletic until he applied himself.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe that today, the way he looks at 60 years old. But, there's always been that. The successful people have, and I believe anybody can have this in them, to get past that, get over that, tell them, I'll show you, and when I hear black leaders today, I don't hear that message. I don't hear that you have that opportunity in America, and ultimately, in the long run, there's certain things you got to do to get there, but where that end result is never. I'm waiting for some prominent black. I sit here and I listen to these NBA players who are all living in their gated community, telling me what a racist I am, and I'm sitting here. Why don't you get off your dead ass? Go get an apartment in downtown Chicago, and you keep your ass there for a while. You go live with them. You go with them. You go live in that area.
Yeah, just with the less. I know what you mean.
You have
the less advantaged.
Yeah, you live in an area that people are bashing in windows, and don't just sit there and watch it on TV.
Right.
Okay. And again, I'm not hearing anything, any message of positivity.
No.
I'm hearing, go out there, and if somebody doesn't agree with you, get in their face. If somebody, if you got the chance to destroy something or tell a cop to F off, you go do it. And I start to go,
Yeah, well, this guy in SD67 that was up in Hugo, we're going to burn this town to the ground. And, and he's still, I apologize. Yeah, real heartfelt, buddy. And no reprimand at all from the DFL. But yet, this is the prevailing attitude. And, we cannot continue like this. We need positive leaders. We need to have people that are able to. What we need is we need to stop calling people we disagree with racist. Absolutely.
That's
how it works. I mean, that's part of cultural Marxism, is that unless you create a bad guy, you can't show that there's disadvantage, that there's oppression. You have to have an oppressor in order to show that you're oppressed. And that is how you get people to revolt. You don't pull people up out of their oppression. You create a boogeyman and you say, that's the oppressor, get him.
Yeah, well, that again, that just sets us back even further.
Yeah.
And it's something, I'll tell you, I'm just lucky. I'm so happy I'm not a young person right now. I hate getting old. And I just think, God, I mean, you and I grew up through the Rodney King riots, and we saw, I saw real oppression like Tiananmen Square,
right?
Which I'm sure kids today don't even heard of, but it's, you just wonder, is the United States on the verge of a real fight?
Yes.
I mean, are we on the verge of, I don't want to say a civil war again.
Yes.
But are we on the verge of, look what the George Floyd thing did. Mm-hmm. One incident out of the millions that police and citizens go through every day. Look what that touched off.
Well, and I hate to tell you this. I mean, look what it touched off just with what happened in Kenosha, which is,
Yeah, I haven't seen that yet. I haven't watched that.
I haven't watched it yet either, but I know that they had to bring in state troopers and all that stuff because...
Yeah, the governor over there was a Tim Walz wannabe.
Yeah.
Kind of stood and dithered and tried to dodge it.
But he accepted Trump's help.
Yeah, well you saw what happened when you didn't.
Right. Well, but I mean, even here, over the past couple of nights, violence has been flaring up again. Tonight, there's an 8 p.m. curfew in Minneapolis, because, idiots are down there smashing stuff and looting again.
Yeah, by the way, do we have a sheriff in Hennepin County?
I heard that we did.
What is he doing?
I don't know.
God, he's as useless as a $3 bill. Our mall cop sheriff. I mean, get off of your ass.
Maybe he's out foreclosing some things.
No, he's out at the donut shop. God, he's useless.
Well, and here's the thing, though. I mean, if that's happening now with what's happening in Kenosha, when the guy is reaching into his car when the cops are telling him to stop. I
didn't see anything, I don't.
You don't ever do that. Cops say you stop, you stop. You don't walk to your car and then reach in your car where they can't see what you're grabbing out of it.
Yeah, see, I don't know any of the details, so I'm not even going to comment on it.
But that is what happened in the video. It would be nice to have some sound with that and hear exactly what went on.
And here's the other thing I don't like, from what I've been told, and again, I don't want to speak too much because I haven't seen it. I always like to see what happened before, what happened, because that's always
he had a warrant out for his arrest.
But that's always the part that's missing is, and I'm not saying it makes anything right or wrong, but I like to see the whole thing.
Right.
Before I say anything, because if you're not seeing everything,
right?
And I'm not, again, I don't want to go there, but if a cop shoots somebody or somebody shoots at I guarantee you something happened before that.
Yes,
it just doesn't happen. So what? And like you said, sound's important too. What was said?
Yeah.
And if you don't know what was said, it's he said, he said.
Here's the thing: nobody knows, but yet we've got people rioting and burning things down, burning Kenosha down, rioting and looting here again.
Yeah, and an irresponsible media on top of it.
But here's my point in that if that's happening now, what's going to happen? Because I can almost guarantee you that with the way that our lousy attorney general trumped up these charges to make them harder to prosecute, and now with the body cam footage that came out of George Floyd being on fentanyl, of saying he can't breathe when he's sitting in a cop car not getting touched, when the report comes out from the coroner that says it's possible that he might have died anyways based on his drugs.
Yeah.
He could have. He may have. It is going to be a lot harder to prosecute these cops. And when and if they get off, you think that those people are not going to try again to burn this city to the ground? You're crazy.
Well, and again, we have a government that's going to let them.
We do. And so is the city of Washington, D.C. There's a group
Seattle, Portland.
Yeah, well, there's a group that has stated that they are going to protest for 50 days in front of the White House from, ironically, about 47 days before the election on.
We're supposed to gather in groups of more than 25.
Yeah, I don't know. I know the Secret Service and the National Park Police will be on top of it as much as they can be, but
they're not.
We've seen what happens in Washington, D.C. They've been rioting for how long?
Well,
so it's the same thing. These cities, one after the other.
Anybody have to go to work?
I don't know, but it's Dallas.
There's the liberal faction in Dallas.
It's southern cities, Atlanta.
Well, here's the thing, too. A court of law, I mean, and I've said this before when I saw the charges, that you can't, first off, it's not up to a jury to sort this out. It's up to a prosecutor to make a charge and prove it.
Right.
Not up to the jury to decide if it's manslaughter. I mean, that's absurd to put that on a jury. It's up to, here are the charges. We're going to prove them beyond a reasonable doubt. And I said before that I didn't think first or second degree murder applied here. And that's only because of the law, the way the laws are written. I don't know what they are in Wisconsin, but in Minnesota, if you don't have intent to kill and premeditation, you're not, if you apply the law, and we all know juries don't always do that, I don't see how first or second degree murder applies here. Now, that doesn't mean that I would vote not guilty, okay? Right. Because I still think assault charges and things like that should be brought.
Right.
And they weren't. So, but I think you're looking at a manslaughter, depraved indifference, criminally negligent homicide conviction here. I think that's where it's going to be headed, because I don't see how you can prove intent to kill.
Right.
To kill, okay? Not intent to, that meaning my knees on something, I'm trying to kill them. And I don't get how you get there, especially with the other officers. Remember, they were all charged with this stuff.
Right.
And I mean, I don't know how you get there.
Well, I mean, that just proves our point. I mean, it seems like the Democrats who run these cities, who run these state offices, their policy is to rub sand in the wounds of minorities to the point where it hurts, and it's an irritant, and it creates racial tension. It creates hostility between people, and that is a huge problem. A lot of these businesses getting burned belong to minorities. People who decided that they were going to do the right thing and build a life for themselves and work hard. They're a lot of the ones that are losing businesses in all this. Yeah.
And I would also, again, they're the people who need to speak out too.
Right. And some of them have.
Some of them have, but I think, again, the media has done a bad job of covering this. I'd like to see other media jump in the fray. Yeah. And I don't know that,
just doesn't fit the narrative, unfortunately.
I know it doesn't.
There's always a slant.
But again, you speak loud enough, and people can't ignore you forever. So I don't know. I just think, again, for me, I'm always a long-term thinker, and the long term is education. The long term is getting these neighborhoods some law and order, and getting drugs out of there. And again, if the demand is there, nothing, whether it's legal or illegal, nothing's going to change. So, and I have my back and forth on whether drugs should be legalized or not. I've gone back and forth my entire life on that. But those things are killing these inner cities. And I listen to these politicians running them, and they are clueless on how to stop it and how to change. I listen to these civil rights leaders, and I don't hear anything other than more handouts, somebody's screwing you, there's a boogeyman out there, it's not your fault. That's all I hear. So, somehow, until that changes, until there's an initiative taken, that my vote's not going to be taken for granted anymore. And I'm not just voting for somebody because that's who my dad and my mom voted for. Ultimately, what's going to change that?
Right. Well, I mean, I argue it's not a political choice at all. I don't think they should continue to vote for the same people. You're not going to get anything different. But there's got to be a culture change. There's got to be a change of heart. A lot of blacks are church-going people, and so I think
very much so.
In your communities, get your churches involved in your community and start pulling people out of the fire one by one, and white churches, whether in the inner city or in the suburbs, get involved with these inner city churches and help them out. And, if you can get clothes together, or you can get, the more charity work that the church can do, the less the government has to do. And the more that people look to the church rather than the government, the more likely we are to solve the problems of society.
Well, and I think faith can help solve the family issue. I
Absolutely.
I think, again, if you look at one of the things is the absence of God, and how many people who are sentenced to life in prison all of a sudden find God. Well, maybe if you found God earlier, and it's not always their fault. I mean, you're not raised in a religious. I mean, I was raised in a very Lutheran house. I know you were raised with faith too. It becomes a prominent thing for you, but ultimately, I think again, the destruction of the family, the destruction of God. I mean, to me, they go hand in hand. I'm not necessarily talking about a certain religion. Okay, I'm more talking about just that church is that. Why is churches seen as so negative by a large chunk of the people on the left? They just despise churches, and they'll never say that directly, but they do.
Or they set up churches that are political in nature that push their political agenda.
Yeah, they're all over the place.
Yes.
I live by one that has rainbows on it, Black Lives Matter on it, and I'm just going, this isn't getting you anywhere. You're preaching the wrong thing, and the message shouldn't change. The message of faith doesn't change with the times. Okay, it is what it is.
It's eternal.
So I mean, the churches, the schools. They have to be the centers of the neighborhoods, and if they're not, you got to be able to get to a different one.
Yeah.
Period.
That's true.
Jay, I'm getting tired.
Yeah.
We've talked enough. We've set this up enough, I think, for future episodes. We gave everybody a little history, gave people some ideas. What I'd like to see is, and again, I'm a believer in individualism, not groupthink, not focus groups and crap like that. And the key to success, education, the family, staying away from drugs, unwanted pregnancy. I mean, to me, they're universal. To me, it doesn't matter what race or gender you are. One of the 26 genders. Those principles, those things are true to everyone. And I hope and pray that things in the black community change. But I'm not a racist for disagreeing with the policies of the people who put them there. Okay, because I hold one party responsible for sticking black people where they are and leaving them there.
Yeah.
They've turned their backs on them. They treat them like crap. Just because you appoint a few blacks to your congressional committee, that is not indicative of how to get success. It's that, again, you appoint somebody, but you don't talk about how they got there.
Right.
Okay? How they got there. How'd they do it? That's never the story.
Right.
So it's got to be, though. It has to be. It's got to change.
Yeah, it needs to. Unfortunately, you've got one party who put them there and the other party who doesn't know how to pull them out. And so they don't.
The other party doesn't even try. They don't even go in there.
Yeah.
They just write it off. We'll win the suburbs. What?
Yeah.
But that's part of why Republicans can't win statewide elections here. They can't go anywhere, and they won't. I mean, how many stops in Minneapolis did Jeff Johnson make? Was he live too far away or something? I mean, it was. And look, Jeff's not alone in that, but it's just you got to represent everybody, and so it's I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, Jay, I'm not giving you an introduction this week.
Wow.
I'm too tired. We're gonna have a short sign-off sermon because I'm about to kerplotz, just use a Yiddish word.
Is that so?
Yeah. So what?
Well, that's fitting, seeing where we record this. So that's good.
What WOW? Not wow. Words of wisdom. Words of what WOW do you have for us this week? Styling and profiling, jet flying, limousine riding. What do you got?
Well, we're headlong into election season now. Democrat convention is done. The Republican convention is, by now it's done. That wrapped up this evening. And from here on out, it is a push to the finish line. It is no longer a marathon. It is now a sprint. And you are going to see any manner of craziness happen. I don't even know what's coming. We have so many variables. We have not just the candidates. We also have the coronavirus still. We have these riots to contend with. We have all these crazy politicians that are promising things that people I don't think would want if they understood them. And yet here we are, I've never seen anything like this where we're rioting outside of people's homes and it's okay. And we're letting destruction go on and it's okay. And but cities are being burned to the ground and it's okay. It's not okay. And I think the poll numbers are starting to reflect that. People are tired of this. But, if you keep electing and voting for the same people that you've always voted for, and they're in positions to make a difference and they don't, what good are they? Why continue to vote for them? You think Joe Biden's going to do anything different than he's done in the last 40 years? No. Just like you think that, you've got this Minneapolis City Council. Look what's happened since they've been in. You think voting for any of them, again, is a good thing? I mean, you're going to get more of what you got already. And none of them are dissenting from each other. They're in lockstep. Look how much they all want to get rid of the police department. It's not just Minneapolis. It's not just St. Paul. It's your city. Whether it's bonding for things that you can't afford, whether it's putting in expensive projects that you don't want, whether it's complete streets, whether it's becoming a green step city, whether it is spending and tax increases, it happens everywhere. And when we say that these cities are run by Democrats, earlier we were talking about the major cities, but it happens in the smaller ones too. We got to take a look at this. And it doesn't matter what the color of our skin is. White, black, brown, red, any color. Any color at all. It doesn't matter what color you are. It does not dictate how you vote. What should dictate how you vote is how you feel about your relationship with God. How you feel about having to spend money you don't have. How you feel about abortion, how you feel about more restrictive laws that make you less free, how you feel about being able to start your own business and how inhibitive it can be. It doesn't matter what color you are. It matters how much freedom you have. Freedom to believe what you want, freedom to pursue the things that make you happy, and freedom to make a life for yourself. So, if those are the goals, and they are, we've been endowed by our Creator with the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. All men have been created equal. Every last single one of us. And the problem is, there's one group that has made us convinced that freedom comes through the things that they give us. But that is not freedom. Freedom comes from being able to live out our lives as we see fit. Freedom comes from the freedom to be able to do good for others. Freedom comes when we have a choice. We don't often have a choice. The financial burdens are too high. The regulations are too stringent. Sometimes life seems like we wake up, we do the same thing over and over again, go to bed, wake up, and it's like we just moved the needle back to the record to listen to the same side. And that's our life every day. Life is meant to be more than that. And it doesn't matter what color you are. You were created with a purpose to do something amazing. That's why we're here. We are here to help you achieve, to help you believe, and we're not going to back down from that. As much as there is a political solution to all this, even more so, there is a character solution. And if we all just start being better people, I think we'll see things change in government. We'll see things change in education. We'll see things change in entertainment and in business. So it's time for us to take stock of ourselves and ask that hard question. Okay, I've always done the same thing. Has this made things better? Has it made things better? Think about that. We've got some good episodes coming up, and we're going to tell you about how these people have desired to take over education, have desired to take over business, have desired to take over the economy, have desired to take over the family. Speaking of which, if you happen to be in Minnesota and you hear this and you know of any curriculum going in around any new sex ed programs, around Black Lives Matter curriculum, around any other type of new curriculum that doesn't look quite right, please send it to us. You will have our confidentiality. We won't rat you out, but we would love to be able to share that with the state, because there's some bad stuff going in, and we've seen just the crust of it. And we're going to do a lot more research, and we're going to report back to you on this stuff. But we need you to inform us. And we're here. Just send it on out to commsolutionsmn@gmail.com. That's commsolutionsmn@gmail.com. Let us know all about it, and we're more than happy to tell your tale for you. And also, I want to thank you for listening to this podcast. It means a lot. And we've been watching the numbers, and it has grown steadily over time, and we're so thankful. We're so thankful that more people are getting it and more people are understanding that there is a local solution. And I hate to beat up on any political parties. Well, not really. We do it all the time. But if we're ever going to be turning Minnesota red or red to the roots or whatever you want to say, it has to start at the local level. We can't just be worried about a presidential race. Can't just be worried about a governor's race. We've got all sorts of races down the ticket that prepare people for those races someday, and it starts down at the local level. And so we've got to change our cities, change our communities, change our schools, and from there, things will get better. All right? So, with that, we will be back in another week. We promise. And we will have more for you. Until that time, put on your thinking cap. Consider what we've said and pass this around to everybody you know, because it is so important. And I'm just so thankful for your friendship and your willingness to listen. And we've done our part. And we love you, Minnesota. But now it's your turn to get to work.
Get too caught